The engine's rumble echoed through the garage like a familiar tune. My fingers slid precisely over the carburetor of the 1967 Chevrolet Impala, the last project my dad left unfinished. The workshop was my sanctuary. Every tool and part was arranged exactly the way Dad used to keep them. William Wilson was known in 3 states as the Wizard. No one restored classic American cars like he did. I inherited more than just this house and workshop 8 months ago. I got his talent, his passion, and his keen eye for details. I'd been his helper since I was 12, barely able to lift a wrench. Now I continue his legacy, not as a formal business, but out of love for the art we shared. I adjust the distributor while a photo in the corner of the bench watches me. Dad smiling next to the first car we restored together. "It's coming along nicely, Dad," I murmur, tightening the last bolt. I wipe my hands on my oil-stained coverall and take in the progress. 2 weeks, and this baby will be roaring again like in the 60s. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get more stories like this. The envelope was on the kitchen table when I came in for breakfast. An official white envelope with the Willow Creek Homeowners Association logo. Strange, since I'd never had problems with them before. I opened it with a pang of apprehension. "Dear Mrs. Wilson, it has been reported that the property located at 742 Maple Street is being used for commercial purposes in an exclusively residential area, violating Municipal Convention Code 3.4. I read the letter in disbelief. Had someone reported my workshop? I kept restoring cars just like my dad did 30 years ago, never charging more than the cost of materials when I helped a friend. It was never a formal business. 3 days later, another envelope arrived, even more formal than the first. The language was harsher, mentioning daily fines if the commercial activities didn't stop immediately. Something was wrong. The association had recently changed its board, but this approach felt way too aggressive. I decided to visit the association's office to clear up the misunderstanding. The new administrator, a man in a sharp suit I'd never seen around the neighborhood, greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Mrs. Wilson, the rules are clear. We've received reports of cars being repaired, industrial tools being used, frequent parts deliveries. That counts as commercial activity. These are just personal projects. My dad did this his whole life without any issues. Times have changed. The neighborhood is appreciating. Certain geek activities no longer match our community vision." I left with a knot in my stomach. That community vision felt more like a power grab than genuine concern. The third notification came with photos. My garage with the door open, me working on the Impala, boxes of parts at the entrance. I felt a chill. Someone was watching me. A black car started driving slowly past the house 2-3 times a day. The notices turned into veiled threats. Non-compliant properties may be subject to seizure procedures. One night, while I was tuning up the Impala's engine, I heard a noise in the backyard. When I went to check, I caught a silhouette jumping over the fence. My heart raced. I installed security cameras the next day. The following week, I found the back door's lock had marks of a break-in attempt. Nothing was stolen, but the message was clear. They weren't just watching me. They were trying to get in. I reviewed the camera footage only to find that the recordings from that night were gone. Someone had accessed the system remotely. After that, I started switching up my routine. I left some lights on in empty rooms and carried a pocket knife. Fear became a constant companion. The shattering glass woke me up at 3:17 in the morning. My heart was pounding as I dialed emergency services, hiding in my closet. I heard movement in the garage, metal clanging, muffled voices. By the time the police arrived, the intruders were already gone. My garage was unrecognizable. All of my dad's specialized tools, rare parts, diagnostic equipment, everything was taken. The Impala had broken headlights, and the body was scratched with a threatening message. "Get out." The officer took notes without much enthusiasm, suggesting I get better insurance, and muttered something about neighborhood squabbles. I realized I wasn't going to get any real help. Trembling with anger and fear, I made the only call I could at that moment. "Uncle Frank, I need your help. Something really strange is happening." Frank Wilson arrived in less than an hour, even though he lived 40 minutes away. My uncle, my dad's older brother and a former cop with 25 years of experience, examined the garage with trained eyes. This wasn't an ordinary robbery, Maggie. It was organized, premeditated. They knew exactly what they were after. He pointed to specific marks on the floor. And that message wasn't written on a whim. "Someone wants you out of here, for some reason." Frank set up shop in my living room, spreading out photos, documents, and notes. I started looking into this new homeowners association. There are rumors on various online forums about aggressive tactics in neighboring neighborhoods. Over the next 2 days, we reviewed neighbors' security camera footage, checked public records, and spoke discreetly with other residents. 3 houses have been seized in the last 6 months for alleged code violations, Frank said, showing me a map with the properties marked. All sold quickly to the same development company, at prices well below market value. We got a lead when Frank recognized one of the pickup trucks used in the robbery in footage from a nearby convenience store. The license plate led us to a storage facility on the outskirts of the city. We parked a safe distance away and watched the place for hours. Men were unloading equipment from various trucks. I even recognized my tools being loaded. "This is a coordinated operation," Frank whispered. "They're using the association as a front to intimidate homeowners, force them out, and then buy the properties at rock-bottom prices." We used a camera with a zoom lens to document everything: faces, license plates, goods. In one isolated area, we saw something that sent chills down my spine: a pile of street signs and mailboxes. It wasn't just intimidation, it was a well-orchestrated scheme to wipe out entire properties. "We need more proof before we confront them," Frank said as he reviewed the photos on our way back. "They clearly have contacts in the local police. We have to be smarter." That night, as we went over our findings, I realized I wasn't just fighting for my tools or the garage. I was defending my dad's legacy and my right to exist in the place we called home. On the 3rd night of staking out the storage facility, a middle-aged man with graying hair and thin-rimmed glasses approached our parked car. Frank immediately reached for the gun at his waist. "You guys are too amateurish," the man said, keeping his hands visible. "Watching the same spot for 3 nights straight, in the same car. It's a wonder you haven't been caught yet." "Who are you?" Frank asked firmly. "Someone who can help. My name is Daniel. I work for them. I used to." He nervously glanced over his shoulder. "Can we talk somewhere else?" At a diner about 10 kilometers away, we sat in a booth in the back. Daniel kept fidgeting with a napkin, folding and unfolding it. "I was hired 2 years ago as a real estate analyst. My job was to spot problem properties, homes in up-and-coming neighborhoods that could be snagged for below market value." He took a deep breath. "At first it seemed legit, scouting abandoned houses, properties with legal issues. Then they started asking for vulnerability assessments." "Vulnerability?" I asked. "Yeah, figuring out which homeowners would cave under pressure. Widows, the elderly, people in financial trouble, folks who wouldn't have the strength to fight back." His eyes met mine. "Your name is on the list, Mrs. Wilson. Category C." "What does Category C mean?" Frank asked. "A is for easy targets, people who sell under minimal pressure. B is for those who need a bit more shove. C," he hesitated. "C is for people who need to be removed. People who won't cooperate, who don't get easily intimidated. Like you." My stomach dropped. "Removed how?" "They don't tell me everything, but I know Category C folks often disappear. Accidents, sudden moves without warning to the neighbors. I used to brush it off, thinking it wasn't my business." He swallowed hard. "Until I saw your name on the list. Your dad fixed my dad's car once when I was a teenager. He didn't charge anything except for parts, even though he worked on it all summer." Daniel opened the briefcase he carried and spread documents out on the table. Lists of properties, dates, amounts, names of collaborators in the local police and city hall. "This whole scheme is bigger than you think. They take over homeowners associations, create impossible rules, and then use that as a pretext to force people out. The properties are bought by shell companies, given minimal fixes, and then sold at much higher prices when the neighborhood gets revitalized." "Who's behind all this?" Frank asked. "A businessman named Victor Harmon. He never shows up in person. He operates through intermediaries. But he's the one giving the orders, deciding who makes the Category C list." Daniel looked nervously out the window. "I've got to go. They check my GPS, my schedule. If they find out I talked to you, why risk your life to help us?" I asked. He glanced at the faded photo of my dad that I kept in my wallet, visible on the table. "Because there are still people who care about what's right. Your dad was one of them." Before leaving, he handed us a USB drive. "Everything's here. Internal documents, communications, the complete list. Be careful. These people don't play fair." "How can we reach you again?" Frank asked. "You can't." Daniel adjusted his glasses. "I'm taking my family and disappearing tonight. You might want to consider doing the same." We watched him leave through the back door, vanishing into the darkness. "We need a safe," Frank declared as we pored over Daniel's files until dawn. Someplace only we can get to. The USB drive was a goldmine of information. Illegal contracts, lists of target properties, damning communications, suspicious financial transfers, and the most disturbing, photos of removed targets with their respective resolutions. People who had simply disappeared after clashing with the association. "This is too big for us to handle on our own," I commented, rubbing my tired eyes. "We should take it to the state police or even the FBI." Frank shook his head. "Not without guarantees. Look at the list of collaborators. There are names of sheriffs, prosecutors, even a judge. We don't know who to trust." Over the next 2 weeks, we set up our own operations center in the basement. Frank installed an independent security system that couldn't be accessed remotely. I bought extra cameras with my last bit of money and placed them strategically. Some in plain sight, others hidden. The trick isn't just collecting evidence, it's making sure it gets to the right people if something happens to us, Frank explained as he organized the documents. His experience as a cop was invaluable. We created 3 complete sets of evidence, one kept in a secure location known only to us, another split among 5 of Frank's most trusted friends in different states, and a third stored in an encrypted cloud service programmed to automatically send everything to the authorities and the media if we failed to log in every day. "It's our insurance policy," Frank said with a sad smile. "If they try to silence us, we'll make sure everyone knows why." Meanwhile, we started tracking the organization's movements. I noticed patterns in the activities at the storage facility, delivery times, and staff rotations. Frank used some old contacts to quietly investigate Victor Harmon and his closest associates. "He's careful," Frank admitted after days of research. "Officially, he's just a successful real estate guy, a philanthropist even. But he follows the same pattern in 3 different cities: neighborhoods in transition, suddenly reorganized homeowners associations, properties changing hands at suspiciously low prices." One night, while we reviewed footage from our security system, I noticed something odd. "Look at this," I said, pointing to the screen. "The black pickup passes by the house every day at 10:30 in the morning and 3:15 in the afternoon. Exactly the same times. They're mapping your routine," Frank concluded, waiting for the perfect moment. Our biggest break came when we managed to identify one of the men who regularly appeared in the storage facility footage. Terry Malone, an ex-military guy now working as the association's security consultant. Frank used an old contact to find out that he had a record for assault and extortion. "He's the enforcer," Frank explained, "the guy who turns threats into action." After 3 weeks of investigation, we reached a crucial point. We had names, dates, patterns, enough evidence to build a solid case. But we needed something that irrefutably tied Victor Harmon to the whole scheme. "We need a confession," Frank stated, his eyes fixed on the map we'd put up on the basement wall with photos, documents, and red lines connecting people and events. "Something they can't deny." "How are we going to get that?" I asked. "I doubt Victor Harmon is just going to confess his crimes to us." A slow smile spread across Frank's face. "Not to us, but maybe to someone he thinks is on his side." The morning started with an unexpected phone call. Terry Malone, the security consultant, had asked to meet at my place to settle things amicably. A wolf inviting the sheep to dinner. "Perfect," Frank said as we got the house ready. "This is the opportunity we need." Our trap was meticulously planned. Hidden microphones in every room, strategically placed cameras, and 2 of Frank's ex-cop friends hiding in the basement for extra security. We dressed Frank in regular contractor clothes, and he started working openly in the backyard, a supposed casual observer who could step in if needed. Malone arrived right on time at 2:00 p.m., accompanied by a man in a suit who introduced himself as the association's legal representative. Their confident expressions made it look like they expected an easy negotiation with a lone, intimidated woman. "Ms. Wilson," Malone said with a toothless smile, "thank you for having us. We're here to offer a solution to this unpleasant situation." "I'm listening," I replied, keeping my face neutral as I led them into the living room. "The association is willing to overlook all the accumulated violations and fines," the lawyer explained as he opened a folder. "In exchange, we're offering fair compensation for your property, 60% of its market value, paid immediately." "And if I refuse?" Malone leaned in. "Well, the fines will keep piling up. Eventually, the association will be forced to start foreclosure proceedings. It'd be unpleasant and drawn out." "Looks like I don't really have a choice," I commented, noticing how they subtly relaxed. "It's just business," the lawyer smiled. The neighborhood is changing. Homeowners like you, with activities that don't fit, end up leaving sooner or later. Like what happened with Martha Jenkins on Oakwood Street? I asked innocently. Or Richard Carson on Pine Avenue? Their smiles faltered for a moment. I'm not familiar with those names, the lawyer quickly replied. Strange. They were Category C too, just like me, and now no one knows where they are. Malone abruptly stood up. I don't know what you're talking about, but we're here to discuss your situation specifically. Sure, but I'm curious. How does Pinnacle Investments benefit from these acquisitions? It's Mr. Harmon's company, right? The man calling the shots? Malone's face hardened. You're making dangerous accusations, Ms. Wilson. Those aren't accusations. They're facts. Just as it's a fact that you stole my tools, vandalized my property, and have been systematically threatening me. The lawyer closed his folder. This conversation is over. If you don't accept our generous offer, we'll take care of it by other means. How exactly are you going to do that? I asked calmly. Are you going to officially put my name on the removals list? Or am I already on it? Malone stepped toward me threateningly. You don't know who you're dealing with. In fact, I know exactly who I'm dealing with, Mr. Malone. Or should I call you by your real name, Thomas Markowitz? The same guy who was dishonorably discharged from the army for violent conduct and later imprisoned for extortion in Chicago. He froze, a vein throbbing at his temple. You think you're untouchable, I continued. That you can scare people out of their homes, forge documents, bribe officials, and no one will notice. But we noticed, and we documented everything. The lawyer grabbed Malone by the arm. Let's go. She's bluffing. Tell that to your boss, I replied, picking up my phone. Actually, why don't I tell him in person? I dialed the number we'd found in Daniel's files. After 2 rings, a calm, measured voice answered. Victor Harmon. Mr. Harmon, this is Margaret Wilson. I'm with your associates, Mr. Malone and his lawyer, in my living room. They seem a bit worried that I know about your entire operation. Category C lists, fraudulently acquired properties, people who have disappeared. The whole operation. A brief silence on the other end. I don't know what you're talking about, but that sounds like defamation. Well, conveniently, I have all the evidence you need. Internal documents, communications, financial transactions, everything. Any document you might have was obviously forged, he replied coldly, and threats don't work on me. I'm not threatening. I'm informing you. Exactly 27 minutes ago, complete packages of this evidence were delivered to the FBI, the State Attorney General's office, the Real Estate Oversight Department, and 3 civil watchdog organizations. Oh, and 7 different media outlets received a very interesting summary. Harmon's audible breath over the phone was the only sound in the room. Malone and the lawyer turned pale. You have no idea the mistake you just made, Harmon finally said. No, Mr. Harmon. The mistake is yours, thinking you could threaten ordinary people indefinitely without consequences. Some people care about justice more than money or fear. My dad was one of them, and so am I. I hung up and glared at the 2 stunned men in front of me. I suggest you leave my property now. The state police will be here in about 20 minutes, and I don't think you want to be around when they show up. They quickly left, practically running to the car parked outside. Frank came in through the back door, grinning broadly. Perfect, he said, taking off his work cap. We got everything on tape. And now? Now we wait. The storm is just beginning. 6 months later, the Wilson Community Workshop is officially open, with all the necessary permits and the enthusiastic support of the new Homeowners Association. I've transformed the garage into a larger space, blending mechanical skills with a community purpose. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I teach basic mechanics to local teenagers. On Wednesdays, we have the Classic Car Club, where enthusiasts get together to share stories and knowledge. On weekends, the workshop doubles as an impromptu community center where neighbors meet up, chat, and forge bonds. The trial of those involved in the criminal scheme continues. Frank is frequently called to testify, his police background making him a particularly valuable witness. The case even helped expose similar schemes in other cities, dismantling a network that spanned 3 states. Victor Harmon is still at large, but his assets have been frozen, and his companies are under federal investigation. He might have gotten away for now, Frank once commented, but he doesn't hold any power here anymore. On one particularly pleasant Sunday afternoon, I make the final adjustment on the red 1965 Mustang engine that belonged to my dad. It was the first car he restored by himself, kept covered in the back of the garage all these years. I decided it was time to bring it back to life. I turn the key, and the engine roars to life with a deep, powerful sound that echoes through the neighborhood. Some kids playing on the street run over to see. their eyes lighting up with wonder. "Want to take a ride?" I ask, and their faces brighten immediately. As I slowly cruise through the neighborhood with my excited little passengers, I see neighbors waving, well-kept gardens, and houses being renovated by their rightful owners. The forced "for sale" signs have disappeared, replaced by a renewed sense of permanence and belonging. I pass by the old headquarters of the fake homeowners association, now turned into a community library. In front of it, a small memorial has been erected for Richard Carson and the other victims who disappeared, their cases still under investigation, but no longer forgotten. Back at my garage, I find Frank waiting with an envelope in his hand. "What's this?" I ask as the kids dash back to their homes full of stories to tell. "A letter from Daniel," he replies with a smile. "He's finally settled somewhere safe. He says he's doing well, that he started a new life. He sends his thanks." I open the envelope and find a brief note and a photograph. Daniel with his family in front of a modest house somewhere sunny. Everyone smiling, finally free from fear. That night, I sit on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sunset over the neighborhood. The gleaming Mustang parked at the garage entrance feels like a symbol of everything that happened, something valuable that nearly got lost, restored not only to its original state, but transformed into something even more meaningful. On the workshop wall, my dad's photo now hangs alongside others, him and me working together, the new community workshop, smiling faces of neighbors and students. A legacy that goes on, not just of restored cars, but of a community that refused to be broken. Tomorrow I have a class to teach, a 1973 Corvette waiting for some attention, and a meeting with the Homeowners Association to discuss improvements to the local park. But tonight, I'm just enjoying this hard-won moment of peace. My dad's legacy lives not only in the machines we restore, but in the spirit of resilience and community that we defend. As the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky, I raise my cup in a silent toast. "We did it, Dad. We did it." Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get more stories like this.